All right, take two of my first impression review of Dune. Sans cat, constant meowing. I went to see the movie at a 3:50 matinee. I got out of the theater at about 20 minutes to 6. No, sorry, 40 minutes after 6, 20 minutes to 7. Um, the cinematography was perfect. The soundtrack was excellent. The acting was actually really good. I think predominantly the so-called wokeified issues that people had are non-issues. Um, I have yet to see a single role in the film that was not adequately, if not perfectly, cast. Nobody that was just like, ugh, really? I know that the thing people would have an issue with is Dr. Kynes being a female. This I don't have an issue with. The role was taken care of just fine. My issue was that there's an entire sequence where Kynes attempts to, how do I put it, stall for time on behalf of Paul and Jessica, and that's what gets Dr. Kynes uh, thrown out into the desert with a busted still suit with no water pump to eventually die. And the final death is at the mouth of a sandworm on top of drum sand, but after a day of wandering and delusion and delirium going on. The whole "I am a desert creature" thing, all of that. Instead, it got condensed down. Okay. It's a film based on a book. It's a very, very, very dense, very, very, very long book. It's all right. As far as how the film opened, as a purist, it would have been nice to have something more like the actual beginning of the book. However, at least they didn't just try to reinvent the movie from 1984. So what you get is the girl who's constantly in the main character's dreams talking to him has a segment spoken at the beginning that could very well be from one of his dreams. And it introduces the audience to the bad guys early without any dialogue from the bad guys. It introduces the Atreides homeworld quite nicely. And it brings into the storyline right about the point that you actually meet Paul. A few things are taken out of order with the thing with him practicing the voice and whatnot at breakfast, but I mean, it was a thing in there where they have practice. I think it's actually when they arrive at Dune the first time, when they first get there, or I don't know. But anyways, I found it enjoyable. I think the pacing was great. I think it was excellent. I think that the overall, now granted, I've only seen it the one time, but bear in mind that I've read the novel Dune probably 12 or 13 times, and I've read the entire series from beginning to end over, I think at least 7 times now that I've done them all. I'm quite familiar with Dune. I appreciated where it ended. I thought it went very well for what it was a good time. I did have to go up and go to the bathroom right before Leto attempted to kill the Baron, and I think they did a really good job. And the thing is, there are scenes that are not from the book per se. There are things that are not exactly as they went in the book that if they had done so would not have been done well in a film. So a lot of the things you are able to gain the information about the universe without having, in the novel's case, a glossary at the very start that says terminology of the Imperium, and it gives you a glossary of the words you're going to have to learn to be able to read the book fluidly. Instead of that, they find ways to show things. It's ornithopters are shown at the very well. Actually, it wasn't even a thopter that they were showing at the beginning. That Duncan was piloting, and there's a ton of visual information that anybody who's read the book knows exactly what they're looking at. Anybody that hasn't read the book will see the film. They will go home, look some stuff up, and then go see the film again. and learn about it. The last thing I want to address is, right before recording this, I tuned out from Timcast IRL because they were talking about having attempted to go see the film and walking out halfway through it. Tim said that not only had he not read the book, but he brought his girlfriend, who had not read the book, to a movie based on a book. The complaint about the first film adaptation of which was that it was too short of a time to convey the story, and that too much was done in too little amount of time to convey the story. So now we have a two-parter, what's going to come to an over 5-hour epic to cover a book that is like this thick. And done so in what looks like the, how do I put this, the delineation in the book. They've got part 1, Dune, and then they've got part 2, Muad'Dib. I think there might be a part 3, The Prophet, or maybe that was something that was added in a fan edit. Anyways, it's basically 2 large segments of book anyway. They completed through the part where he gets off into the desert and meets with the Fremen, and the next part will be his time as Paul Muad'Dib, as Usul, as the leader of the Jihad. So Tim's complaint was that he noticed his girlfriend had fallen asleep. He was hoping that because it was done new and that they were saying that it would be done correctly, that it would be done with a more fast-paced storyline. Except Dune does not have a fast-paced storyline. And, like I said, the number one complaint about the other film, other than some interpretational issues like weirding modules, is that too much happens too quickly with not enough explanation. There is no way to get into the story unless you've already read the book. So, from watching this one, if you hadn't already read the book, you should be able to follow the story. But it is some Lawrence of Arabia, sprawling epic stuff. I don't know how you would think. The only way you would think... Oh, sorry, let me take that back. Of course I know how you would think that. If you hadn't read the book, and you went and saw the movie and tried to make any judgment about the movie. Okay, why are they making this movie? Because a ton of people have read the books. More people need to, definitely. There are lessons in there that people like me who have read that book and those series extensively are very familiar with what is going on in the world right now and are already prepared to deal with it. Whereas people that have not, it's a lot of stuff they will find mystifying. But Dune is about the long term. What is it? I think by the end of the first book, 5 or 10 years time passes. It picks up almost immediately afterward at the second book. By the third book, the children who are but infants at the end of the second book in the third book are 8 or 9 years old. In the fourth book, the surviving brother of the 2 twins, of a brother and sister, the bloodline is born by the sister. The brother takes on the sand trout skin, does the thing that his father Paul was afraid to do, which is to go the super long-term route. In the fourth book, the son of Paul from the first book is about 1,500 years old, give or take a few years. The fifth book takes place 1,500 to 1,000 years, or no, what was it? Letter world for what, 3,500 years, I think? Yeah. So he is almost 4,000 years old in the fourth book. He dies there. In the fifth book, it takes place a good 1,500 years to 1,000 years after the fourth book. And the fifth, sixth, and then the final 2 books, which were written posthumously by the son and another science fiction author based on an outline that is supposedly came from the original author, which, by the way, there is a lot of father and son passing of information motif in the book series, so it was actually really appropriate that a time capsule would be discovered. Actually, in that fifth book, there's a time capsule incident where the God Emperor from the fourth book had used his foresight to know exactly where a future relative would be standing, who would be on a mission that would be relevant to what he was doing, and he had someone go in there with a laser gun and carve out a message in a wall at that specific person's eyeline height so that only when that person walked into this spot and stood where his vision said she would be, that she would see this message from him 1,500 years in the past. And in the 6th book, the main character is Duncan Idaho, who died at the end of the first movie, halfway through the first book, and returns in the 2nd book moving forward. And by the 7th and 8th books takes place, I want to say, a good 30 to 50 years after the events of the 5th and 6th books. These are the only ones that really take place within the same kind of time frame as the first 3. The series is about extreme, long-term ecology, governance, the direction of governance for a very specific purpose. It is meant to be sprawling and slow. So stuff happens in the book, but the book is very dense. There's a lot of reading. There is a lot of political philosophy and ecology in there too. Things that they completely gloss over in the films because nobody wants to get a freaking history lesson, politics, ethics, or ecology schooling in a film, right? That's why the people read the book. So for Tim to be like, oh, my girlfriend fell asleep, and so obviously we just decided to get up and leave, it's like, dude, really? So all I really get out of that is, as much as I appreciate the books, and I thought that the film, at least at the first viewing, was pretty good. I enjoyed myself. I didn't have anything that was like, oh, fuck that, that's bullshit. There was none of that. It was a very simple movie to sit, watch, and get into. They didn't really go nuts on anything, and any funny words they used, they explained what they meant. So Tim Pool, for as smart of a guy as he thinks he is, honestly just could not sit through a movie that he did not already know the ending to, and use the girlfriend as an excuse. That's what it seems to me. So anyways, I personally would suggest that everybody go watch Dune. However, once you watch the film, you're going to have questions. You're going to want to get out of the movie. You're going to want to look up like the Wikipedia of the series. Then you're going to want to find out what some of these things were that you witnessed, because there is more to come in the storyline, that the movie has to be successful in order for enough movies to be made well by good directors before their lifetimes expire, right? To be able to put together a film series, which, I mean, I gotta be honest. They put Jason Momoa on the gravy train because Duncan Idaho is the main character of the series, and he is the main protagonist from basically book 2 moving forward. So, tell people that part. Tell people they need to get on watching the movie, paying for it, buying it, whatever you got to do, so that they know that the movie is selling tickets, whether it's at a theater or on HBO, so that they can continue to make these movies, so that if y'all would like to see these kind of people in the films can keep going to see Jason Momoa continue becoming more and more badass as Duncan Idaho as that guy's lifetimes progress. It's really cool. So, oh, I thought it was about space war and sand and the spice. Yeah, it is. But there's more to it than that. The spice is just the currency of the universe and the thing that gives the guy his power. But it's not, this isn't we have to find this isotope or the battleship plans or the... No. This is about a family who changes the course of the universe over the course of about 10,000 years' time. That's what it is. And the ecology, the politics, everything else, the universe that they are in at the start of Dune, where people are like, oh, we thought we were heading for Star Trek, but we're heading more toward Dune. Okay, but that corrupt empire, the entire point for anybody that's read the book and understands what's going on is that when they inherited the planet with the spice and the wealth, it was a trap. They explain it in the movie very clearly. It's very simple. And you know what? We didn't even have the scene with the Baron with the globe and the feint within a feint within a feint. If they'd had that, you would have had the entire exposition of the rest of the 2 movies of what was supposed to happen minus Paul's interference at the outset, at the very opening, because the very, very first part of the book is the Baron explaining the plan. So anyways, go see the movie. Check it out. You'll like it. It's very interesting. It has some direct nods to the Lynch film. It has some subtle nods to the miniseries from Sci-Fi Channel. And the guy who directed it directed Blade Runner, so like the city of Arrakeen has got these, well, not Blade Runner, Blade Runner 2049. The city of Arrakeen has got buildings that look like the cities from Blade Runner with the pyramidal shape and everything, but they're made out of a blade of metal plating to ward against sand. It's very cool how they do this. Go see the movie. Check it out. If you don't understand it, look it up and then go back and see it again. Get them numbers up on that movie. Because not only do we need to see part 2, but we need to see Dune Messiah, where Duncan Idaho returns with metallic eyes as a reproduction of the living person his body was before. And watch through the series as they discover how to unlock those memories and how he becomes a recurring main character long after everyone named Atreides has died. And let's get into the parts where Paul's twins, born with the same powers as him, and fully aware from birth, some stuff that goes down in Dune Messiah, the really craziness. Paul gets blinded, he vanishes into the desert, he eventually returns, he meets his children, although he can't see them, but he can see with his oracular powers, and he sees someone trying to assassinate, so he uses his child across the room, his baby, laying there looking at what's going on. He uses his eyes to see, triangulates, and throws a knife into the throat of the guy trying to harm his children. This is the stuff in the second book. This will be the third movie in the series, right? So go see the movie, go buy the tickets, go rate it well if you go to any rating sites, and then maybe they'll continue to make them so we can continue to see this, and people can continue to watch Jason Momoa strut around and be awesome, right? We want to see the half-sandworm God Emperor. We want to see the change in the planet as he has begun removing the desert. We want to see the next series of books where other worlds are made into Dune at the attempt to recreate the spice cycle. Because as the God Emperor, half worm, takes over Arrakis, he turns it into a green world except for his little spot of desert. And in doing so, kills the worms, ends the spice cycle. And the only spice that the universe has to deal with during his reign is from reserves. As the independent entities, like the Bene Gesserit, try and figure out how to create an Arrakis with worms. So, yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff all the way through the series. Some of the technology in the far future second half of the series is just absolutely mind-blowing. Oh, yeah, and on top of that, there is a guy whose likeness is close enough to the old Duke, Paul's father, Leto, that the loyalty instilled in Duncan, Idaho awakens when it sees this face. And so they begin to breed men who look like this just to be able to wake Duncan up. And eventually, the one who gets used in the final series of books, who does manage himself to become a Ghola a few times and come back, named Miles Tegg, is actually more noble and better at everything than the original Leto Atreides. But he looks just like him. Which means a chance for Duke Leto, or at least a de-agified version of him, to appear later in the 5th, 6th, and 7th books. The most decorated Bashar in the Imperial Army. It turns out that his version of the Atreides family gift is the ability to move basically like the Flash. Even to the point that he nicks his elbow on something and starts bleeding really bad because he didn't realize that he was doing it. And that it burns his body away so fast that he can only go so far so fast before he has to stop and eat. It's like Goku. So this is in the later parts of the books, that there is this other superhuman as well, and there are others that have some of these hidden talents that come out because of their lineage. Alia, Paul's sister, who's only alluded to in the beginning of the first movie here, where he says, "I know you're pregnant." She ends up being a faster and fiercer combat warrior than her brother. He catches her fighting naked with one of their training drones at dangerously high levels. Like, it goes up to 10, she set it to 13, and then just ran with it for a while until she realized her brother was looking at her. The series is so amazing. There's so much going on, and you hear people talk about these kind of storylines, right? There is no direct scene in which most of this stuff is played out. It's not exposition on camera for the simple moviegoer. It is, after you've read the book through all these things, you are able to put together your own logical internal argument as to the events that have transpired. And that is from what people will pick those words and say, oh yeah, Duncan Idaho, the main character. Oh yeah, Alia, she's fiercer than her brother with her own scary powers. Miles Teg with the quickness. It takes a minute for him to get to the quickness, right? A good story has pacing. A good story has suspense. A good story does not front load the book with everything and say, now spend the next however long figuring it out. It doesn't work like that. So it's unfortunate that the first real high quality, high end interpretation of my favorite novel ever written hopefully gets to have more made of it. Hopefully this nonsense with someone like Tim Pool talking about, oh yeah, I just had, okay, dude, okay. So just say you couldn't focus, you couldn't follow it, you didn't have the fucking fortitude to sit through a movie that doesn't have explosions in it constantly. Oh, I thought it would be action. Who told you it would be action? There's more explosions and action in the 1984 David Lynch Dune movie than occur in the whole book anyway. And that one skipped a bunch of stuff. There's some combat. There's mostly training and dialogue. It is a royal house intrigue. It is high drama. It is not guns blazing. Now, there are some times where you'll see some stuff with the laser gun, like if they somehow get through to the sixth book in the series. It's either fifth or sixth book that Miles Teg has this incredible moment where he sneaks up on a hillside full of soldiers and they're moving toward where they thought he was at, and he turns the laser gun onto full power, max pattern broadness, and he knows he's only got about 6 shots or whatever with it, and so he takes it and he aims down a hillside, and imagine wherever this laser hits is going to cut, and anything it cuts, it's going to go through, right? So he takes it and he aims downhill, and he literally just has this thing go like I'm doing across my screen down a hill, and it describes how you can hear sparks flying, fire starting, and men screaming all the way down the hill as the laser beam makes its way down, that he is just, who knows what he hit, right? It could have passed straight through torsos, taken arms off, chopped part of the head. You don't know. It doesn't get described. What you do know is that like an entire garrison of troops on a hillside waiting to invade gets set on fire / mincemeated like this with a laser from up on the top of the hill at night. Stuff like this. There's some little scenes here and there, but you can't devote an entire scene in the film to just, we're just going to make sure that the Miles Teg on the hill part. Okay, but there's other stuff too, though, right? Like, it's all got to be there. So, this ends my initial review of Dune. I do intend to go see it again in the theater if at all possible. Coworker of mine said that he watched it, not having any idea about the series or anything to do with it, but he said he thought it was really good and he enjoyed it. I'm glad to hear that. He watched it on HBO Max, and I got to tell you, man, I watched it front center at the LDX Theater here in town with the reclining seats, and I did not have the slightest urge to fall asleep. I don't know how Tim's girlfriend fell asleep, because it was one of the bassiest, boomingest. The Thopter engines are roaring. The entire theater was literally, it was just like through the entire movie. There was so much going on. It was not distracting, but it was so voluminous that I don't know how she could have passed out. How somebody fall asleep in that, I don't know. Narcolepsy, blood pressure, ADD, I don't know. But pay no attention to the gripes of Tim Pool when it comes to this movie. It was actually really good. If you're a fan of Dune, I don't think you'll be disappointed unless you're really a stickler on some things that, oh my god, they cast black people in this movie. They don't mention black people in any of them. Like, come on, dude. So, I thought the lady that played Dr. Liette Kynes was actually pretty cool. She did everything that needed to be done, and it worked very well. And, what she's up against is the dude whose name I don't even know, as some European actor that was in the sci-fi version as Liette. I think he actually had the most true to the book version. But the other thing is that the character was also played in the 1984 David Lynch Dune film by Max von Sydow. I mean, this is like playing the Joker, playing Liette Kynes. Like, who is going to be the person to play that and pull it off right, So they did it right. Now, here's the other thing. Liette Kynes is Chani's father in the book. So now it's Chani's mother. Okay, whoop-de-whoop. Paul's future wife is the offspring of the Imperial planetologist who went native. And it really doesn't matter at that point whether or not it's a male or a female. So to say that there were wokeified parts, The guy that played Thufir Hawat played him pretty well. I'm not sure that I would have cast a guy quite as big as him, round wise, but maybe Thufir's kind of a fat guy. It's been a while since I read it, so he's certainly, I don't know how skinny he is. And as far as Gurney Halleck, they got Josh Brolin, who still had the Cable haircut and the scar from Cable. That must have, I don't know if they cast him in the Cable film or for that or what, but anyways, it was appropriate. It was decent. There's lots of names in this movie that people will recognize too, so I hope people go to see it. So, gonna end it here. I'm almost out of video space. If I have further thoughts in the future, I will, of course, share them.